Hello and welcome to this review of the book cover you saw on the thumbnail that you clicked on to watch this video. So it's in Eclipse by Richard Paul Russo, and I'm going to show you the cover because it's a beautiful cover and I want to share it. It's annoying that it's mirror image, but Android update decided that videos are only allowed to be shown in mirror image these days, so thank you not at all Google for messing up my life and making it harder. In Eclipse by Russo, a book that I went into cold. Now normally I would do a certain amount of research on the author and the book before I did a review, but on this occasion I haven't, because I went into it cold. I bought it during a book haul, pretty much sight unseen, based on the cover and the reverse of the cover, what it had to say. Cover is very pretty and I enjoy it significantly. And unlike many covers out there, it is also very relevant to the story. So we've got a man staring straight into the viewer's eyes. He's sort of grey shade, almost a Mercury type photography look to him. And that will be our main protagonist, Benedict Stannard. Celto, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And you've got this image of in his eye, and that's obviously to indicate that he's a prime empath. One gets the impression that in this universe, prime empaths are very rare. We hear early on that most of them caught in childhood and trained up, and they all have prestigious careers and wealthy lifestyles that are full of comfort. Benedict didn't have that. He grew up in a slum type area and what sounds like a slum type planet. He was a bit rough and tough survivor, but he is a prime empath, and he's made a living at that. We hear early on that he's been on a number of worlds doing a number of different things, including one revolution and a few explorations for looking for intelligent species. So we get the impression that in this future universe, we've got any number of planets and what sounds like space stations, artificial planets, something like that, that have been settled by humans. And there's been no confirmed, or if there have been, there can't be that many intelligent other species. Benedict seems to have an obsession with it, which slowly becomes revealed throughout the book. Now, those golden bubbles in the background are actually remarkably relevant to the plot, but you don't find that out until right at the end. I really enjoyed the end, by the way. So, yes, we start with Benedict Celto, and he's the first order empath, as I mentioned before. And we start on a, what's it called? It seems like a cross between an artificial planet and a space station, and he's clearly lacking. It's in Winterside, but we gather that this particular artificial world has a winter side and a summer side and two in-between sides. It's lightly sketched but very interesting. Anyway, while he's there, he's approached by a guy called Riker, who's an adventurer. Benedict dislikes him. Riker is presented as very unlikable. His introduction to Benedict is actually potentially fatal, but his excuse for this is, oh well, if you couldn't survive it, you obviously weren't the man I was after for this expedition. Benedict points out that he's not looking for an expedition and isn't interested, but Riker makes him a offer he can't refuse, because he's basically mounting an expedition which is funded by someone else who's never really revealed, at least to begin with, to another planet where they believe there's a species that's intelligent. They want an empath with them to try and find this potentially intelligent species. Benedict's interest in intelligent species is what makes him accept this, even though he doesn't like or trust Riker. And after a fair amount of backstory, they wind up on the planet of Nightshade. Nightshade is a very restricted planet. It survives off the sale of a drug called Flex, which we later find out it comes from a plant native to that planet, but it has to have certain processing things happen before it can be used. is an incredibly well-developed world. And I've been hearing a lot about plot-based books versus character-based books recently. And I think it's hard to choose which of those two things is more developed here. Initially, it feels like it's plot-based because the plot is complicated, the world building is fascinating and detailed, but the characters seem to be sketched very lightly. As we increase through the book, we gather together a few other characters, never too many. One of them is a woman called Renata who lives on the planet of Nightshade, and she's been hired because, for reasons that we find out later in the book. I'm not going to spoiler this one. And another character joins eventually. His name's Gerard, and he's a freelance flex collector who's going to guide them to the part of the jungle where these creatures have been seen before, both by Gerard and Renata. Plot-based versus character-based. The characters are a very slow reveal. They're initially sketched very lightly, but throughout the book, you suddenly realize that these are real people to you. And it's so subtly done. You don't have any of these huge reveals, huge amounts of backstory, info dump, emotional overload thrown at you like many modern books do tend to do. But suddenly, I don't know, maybe less than 200 pages in, maybe 100 pages in, you suddenly realize that Benedict is a real person for you, and he's a person that you're interested in. It's a very mature book. There's no flash bang. There's no young adult slip slides down abysses. It's a slow builder, and I loved it. I absolutely loved the reading experience for this book. It's around about 400 pages long, and I took my time with it. So it's bigger than classic science fiction. This is a 1988 book, I think. It was published in 1980. Yep. So by my standards, kind of newish. This one is a tour book. It's not in great condition anymore, but it was in pretty good condition up until a week ago when I took it off my to-read bookshelf and started reading it and carrying it everywhere with me because I couldn't leave it behind because I wanted more. It's a slow read. The reading experience is excellent. The development of the sites, the world building as it were, you go from this artificial world to Nightshade, which is, it's a very frontier planet feel to it. You've got cities, you've got high crime, low policing. I don't know what Richard Paul Russo was going for there. I got very strong jungle vibes. So I've read several books about adventures in South America. The Chasing Pink Dolphins was one of them. But that jungle, river journey type feel, this humid, rainforesty, animalistic, small trading posts along the way, rough edge of humanity. I really loved it. The actual active reading experience felt enjoyable, every moment of it. I didn't ever have a point where I went, well, that's ridiculous. I didn't get impatient with the characters. Again, didn't get impatient with the plot. I loved the world building, and I didn't get annoyed by anything in this book. Recently, I've been getting annoyed quite often with books if they do stupid things. This one, no annoyance at all. It was just pure, beautiful reading experience. So what to say? I don't think it's for everyone. People who require non-stop action, you're not going to get it here. There is some action, but it's sort of spread out. Sorry. You've got some violent antics, you've got some drug taking, you've got some mature content, but it's told in a mature sort of way. So you have to be in this one for the writing, for the really good but not flashy characters, and the intensely beautifully written but again, not flashy story. So Benedict and Riker and Renata and Jared all head up the river together looking for these animals. And that doesn't happen until a fair way in. So we've already had time to build these characters. That's because we see a lot of Nightshade even before we get going. And that makes it feel like a very real place. Again, I definitely get South American jungle vibes off it. But at one stage when they're in a boat going up the river and it talks about the light coming through the trees onto the water, the other vibes I got were pure Queensland mangrove. So I do a lot of volunteer cleaning with Ocean Crusaders. They clean waterways, mangroves, etc. And there's some moments when you're in a boat in the mangrove and it's just water as far as you can see with stems coming up and the light coming through the leaves. And you just feel as if you're in a completely alien world. And that's the vibe that I got for a lot of the river journey on here. You do see a bit of animals, but you don't see, again, no flashbang experiences. Very much like a real place and real experiences. So, is it a spoiler to say? No, it isn't a spoiler. At the end, after quite a few incidences and a couple of them fatal, they do actually reach the location where these animals have been sighted, and there is an interaction. The interaction itself feels intense, but when you think back over the writing, you realize it isn't one of the most intense experiences you've ever reached in First Contact at all. It's just because the book has taken so long to build up to that point. It feels intense, and that I feel is a very realistic way of writing. It's like most of life is not doing very much, and then you have a small intense activity or event and it feels huge because there's been so much of day-to-day living up to then. And I guess that's part of what I mean about maturity. So there's the maturity of the characterization of the individuals that makes them feel real in that understated way that dealing with real people is. And there's that understated element to the journey through this amazing jungle and up this river, meeting strange people, but not too many of them, finding yourself in strange incidents, all that. Again, it's got this very mature and realistic feel. It feels like an actual travelogue by someone who did it, and I loved that. I was more than ready for this type of book when I read it. So yes, in Eclipse, Richard Paul Russo, never heard of the author. When I picked this up, I would have off the bookshelf. I felt like maybe I'd read it before. As I was reading, I thought, no, I've never read this before. And now, once again, I'm not sure. The ending actually seemed a bit like something I might have encountered once before, but if so, I wasn't probably myself enough of a mature reader to really appreciate the beauty of the writing, because the beauty of the writing and not the highlights, the exciting incidents, are what made this a wonderful book. Anyway, not too much else to say about it. If you think you want a really interesting but slow-paced story with spectacularly nice writing, it's like, it's not, yeah, all you can say is it's nice. It's like there's nothing that in here that is upsetting in its writing style. And I guess that sounds like very mild compliment, but I'm reading a couple of books at the moment where the writing is deeply erratic and it's bothering me. Beautifully written. Don't know who Russo is. Will try and look out more of his books. If he wrote this in 1988, he's got to have more good stuff out there. If you've read any Richard Paul Russo and would like to recommend a book for me to keep an eye out, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and read good books. There's more than enough good books out there to read.